Hi guys. Today we're going to talk about a post that we had. It's kind of like my old Q&As, but I'm doing them live now, or at least close to live on camera. And the reason I chose to do this was twofold. One, because it's a popular absolute misinformation campaign going around right now. And the second reason is because I want to walk you through the process that I went through to debunk or determine for myself, not from anybody else, but for myself, how I debunk these things or confirm them, so that you understand I'm not just parroting things that I find online. I think most of you realize that and can see the level of my research. But for those that are new, let me take the glasses off, I don't like them so much. But for those that are new, I want you to understand that I put a lot of research into this, and even the most trusted sources may not be a legitimate source if you are truly a patriot. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Spirit. I practiced pharmacy for over 30 years in many different settings, including research and investigational drugs. I also, for 13 years, worked within an agency in the state of Florida that was very much like FDA. And I worked with every agency that well, let me say this. I worked with, never worked with the CIA. I worked with FDA, I worked with DEA, I worked with FBI, I worked with Secret Service once. So I worked with, and as well as local police and so forth. So I've worked with a lot of different federal agencies, and actually we worked together. I've worked on task forces where I had to understand their process and so forth, even though I was at state level. So anyway, I saw a whole lot, I learned a whole lot, I taught Tai Chi years ago and started studying energy manipulation many years ago in my 20s. So I just have like a really broad background and I believe that the reason that my many years of life, my decades of life, have given me these experiences and this thirst for knowledge was because this is where I was meant to be in the end, to help people avoid the lies and be that person that's hopefully guiding them peacefully and without too much upset as we navigate through all of the lies that the truth is hidden among. So here we go. All right, so first what I wanted to do is I want you to understand how misinformation works first. Or this is not misinformation, it's disinformation. Misinformation is when somebody quotes something incorrectly. Disinformation is a deliberate effort by someone to spread lies. Okay, misinformation, somebody screwed up. Disinformation is a deliberate effort. We're going to look at what disinformation is today. So let me tell you how this works. This is one of my little bok choys from my hydroponics, which will be on the Clean Living lab eventually. I'll work with hydroponics. But what I wanted to tell you is I put one little seed in here, okay? And that seed grew leaf after leaf after leaf after leaf. It spread, okay? That's how disinformation works, and that's the whole premise of someone planting that seed. So when you see a well-funded person with a background that made a lot of money from legacy media like Disney or Netflix or many of them, okay, there are all of them, news stations and so forth. When they made that money, depending on how much they made an agreement. And I've done a lot of research on the deal with the devil that many of these people make. And we're going to have another video on that. That may be the next one coming up on this particular channel. So when you see somebody, and even though you trust them implicitly, they could be the one that's planting the seed that propagates, that multiple people who trust that person propagate and post all over social media. So let me read this to you. A girl named Deborah posted, Here is some information about hospitals that was sent to me from Truth Social. Now, Truth Social is Trump's platform, so you expect it to be true. This shows you that even though it's on Truth Social, doesn't mean it's accurate, or that the deep state haven't taken part of that or put their little puppets on Truth Social. Here's the message. Every hospital in the United States received a sealed envelope from the Department of Defense. Monday morning at 9 a.m., every hospital administrator in the United States, all 6,129, received a hand-delivered envelope marked Department of Defense, Medical Directive 2026-4, for department use only. It wasn't emailed, it wasn't faxed, it was hand-delivered by uniformed military personnel who waited in the lobby until the administrator personally signed for it. Sounds really important, doesn't it? No hospital publicly disclosed the contents of the envelope, of course, but 4 administrators broke the silence on an encrypted forum a few hours later. Their posts all had the same tone. Everything is about to change. The directive is 11 pages long. The first page contains a single instruction. Ready? Effective immediately, all contacts for the procurement of pharmaceutical products with the following entities are suspended pending federal review. Now imagine, you're just cutting off a bunch of suppliers immediately of drugs to hospitals. First off, this sounds real bad to me. Anyway, the list, this continues the document, the list contains 31 companies. All the major pharmaceutical manufacturers on the planet: Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, Merck, AstraZeneca, Novartis, and Roche. All of them suspended. Not negotiated, not renegotiated, not modified, but suspended. Page 2 introduces the replacement. A new federal medical supply chain operating under Military Logistics Command. The supplies don't come from pharmaceutical labs. They come from facilities operating under the Department of Defense classification since 2021. Facilities that produce frequency-based healing devices. They're hitting every single narrative. Biogenerative compounds and cell restoration technology. That's who's now manufacturing drugs. Okay, first of all, let me say that frequency and drugs are completely opposing concepts, frequency healing and drug healing. So is biogenerative compounds, which could actually be considered a pharmaceutical, and also cell restoration technology. But frequency healing is directly opposed to any kind of allopathic medicine. The letter continues, or the post continues. Equipment that hospital staff have never seen, never trained on, and never knew existed. Page 3 through 8. Page 3 is 8. Page 3 through 8 are training protocols for these clueless medical personnel. All doctors, all nurses, all technicians, mandatory 72-hour certification in what the directive calls quantum medical systems. Not optional, not voluntary, but mandatory. Page 9 is what silenced the administrators. He claims that all patient charges through private insurance companies will be reduced to 0 in 90 days. 3 months, no more money from insurance companies. A lot of people will be out of work. No more deductibles. No more $47 aspirins. No more $300,000 cancer treatments that don't cure cancer. The funding model is shifting entirely to the QFS Medical Allocation System. Okay? A pre-funded, asset-backed account assigned to every citizen at birth. An account you were never told about. This continues in the letter. An account you were never told about. An account that has been accumulating value since the day your birth certificate was registered. Your birth certificate wasn't just a Your birth certificate wasn't just a record. It was a security. Traded on the stock exchange, valued in the millions. The profits went to the corporation that owned the system. That corporation no longer owns the system. The 90-day countdown has begun. In July, the hospitals that you walk into won't be the one you remember. The pills will be gone. No drugs. The equipment will be different. The bill will be zero. They kept you sick because healthy people don't generate revenue. And that's a fact. But that's a whole nother discussion. This business model just received its termination notice, delivered personally. And then at the bottom it says code DOD-med-2026 2026/6129. Hospitals/pharmaceutical suspended /QFS Health. The disease treatment system is dead. The healthcare system has just arrived. And then it says everyone you know needs to see this, pushing you to hurry up and share this. Share it now. And it's signed Julian Assange. That was what I saw. And there was this is how Hangout Disclosure works, but this isn't even Hangout Disclosure. This is deliberate disinformation based on quite a few truths, okay? But and you might say, and people are always saying, why do people post this? Why would somebody just post a complete lie? You must understand that the dark rely on low frequencies, anger, despair, and disempowerment. And as soon as this doesn't happen, whatever the narrative is, they push it off like, oh, misinformation, something didn't happen, something else has to happen, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, it's a deliberate planted seed, and the purpose of that seed is not to grow healthy life, but to grow anger, hate, despair, and disempowerment, because that's how the evil ones work. That's how they defeat you. And that's why it's so important. The more people that can identify these things, question them, and not parrot them, you become more valuable to society as a whole and the evolution of mankind. So I want to teach you how to do this. How I can... First of all, a lot of you know I have this deep intuitive thing. And I spent most of my life, which I didn't say in the intro, part of my job was fraud, health fraud, and misinformation. So I have a training that few people have and an experience that few people have. And that's why I want to share this with you. So the first thing that I did is I contacted a good friend of mine. And she doesn't run hospitals. She runs what do you call them? The urgent care centers, doc in the boxes, okay? But if this were to extend and drugs were to be cut off in hospitals, it only makes sense if it were real that the emergency clinics and the urgent care clinics are also given this same mandate. So I called her, I said, what's going on? Have you heard anything about this? Because she is the one in this group, this corporate group of urgent care clinics that would receive the notice. She is the administrator over them. And she got back with me pretty quickly. And she said, haven't heard a thing. Nothing like that's going on here. And she's in Alabama, mind you. So that was the first red flag. And I said, okay, I'm definitely going to review this a little more. And some of you may not have that option of talking to people in healthcare or military or wherever the lie is coming from. Okay, the second thing I noticed is that the numbers were wrong. I had to check. I went and I used I used many different AIs, and I have them validate each other. So the first thing was I wanted to see how many community hospitals or how many hospitals exist in the United States. Because they said that 6,129 administrators got it. Well, there's 5,121 community hospitals. That doesn't include mental institutions, VA hospitals, or that's just community hospitals, that figure, or the doc in the boxes, apparently. So the 6,129 was feasible if you added the others. But I wanted to check a little further. So I ran some stats and I said, when have we ever had 6,129 hospitals in the United States? And as it turns out, that exact figure, 6,129, matches an outdated American Hospital Association count from 2023, 3 years ago now. Okay, so that was my second thing that I checked on. Then she starts talking, and then she mentioned, or that, not she, whoever sent this, mentioned that there were 4 leakers, and that the message was in all 4 of them. And you see this repeated over and over again in the media. The same phrase, listen for it. People have done many videos of one newscaster after another saying the exact same phrase. I've done something on this before. So the 4 leakers all miraculously had the same thing to say. Everything is going to change. Okay? That wasn't coached, or they weren't told that, right? And it was on an encrypted board, which is feasible. But some sort of confirmation always helps substantiate when you hear these things about the anonymous person said this, and there's nobody ever there. Sometimes there are. Sometimes there's even a face and a talking head. And if they're stupid enough, they use their real name. Others, like this rape suit against Trump, use completely fictitious names to file lawsuits. You know, what happened to you're entitled to meet your accuser. So that's something to always keep in mind when they're anonymous. Okay, so another thing, because I have a background, that I understood is that all of a sudden, all of these 31 drug manufacturers are going to be cut off. And, okay, there's contracts that exist, okay? They are by law both binding. And, okay, maybe the contracts could be declared something, but there's one important thing to understand. That that doesn't make this wash with me, is that drug manufacturers give preferential pricing to hospitals over retail pharmacies or other institutions. And the reason they do that is because if you've got to start on a heart patch, that manufacturer will sell their heart patch for 1 penny a piece to a hospital, because when you get started on that brand in the hospital, you continue that brand for the rest of your life. Then they walk into the pharmacy, and the pharmacist or pharmacy pays $1 a patch. Okay? Not 1 penny, $1 a patch. And then he marks it up 30 to 50%, and that now becomes $1.50 a patch to the consumer. Free enterprise, call it what you will. The fact of the matter is, it's very unfair pricing structure, and this is one of the things that Trump is taking care of. The other thing about this is that so what happens is these hospitals have these drugs that they're getting for pennies on the dollar, or pennies on the dollar, and they have a formulary. It's kind of like a list that doctors can prescribe from. And the ones that give the preferential prices are the ones that the hospital puts on their formulary that doctors must prescribe from. It's a big hullabaloo to get any other brand. If you've ever tried to get your particular medicine while you were in a hospital, you understand this is why. Because the manufacturers almost gave the drugs away so that you would be forced to use their drug. And that's just another part of the control mechanism that is unfair, in my opinion. All right, so I'm going to give you a little story here. One job that I applied for, I got the job, had to give 2 weeks notice at my other place, and 2 weeks after I was hired, I showed up for my first day at work. The guy that hired me wasn't there because he was arrested for contract diversion. What that means is he saw the hospital was getting these patches, whatever. It wasn't only the patches, it's hundreds of drugs, maybe thousands, I don't know. He saw the hospital was paying a penny a piece for these patches, and he knew from his retail experience or friends or whatever that they had to pay $1 a piece. So, of course, guess what he does? He turns around and he takes that stock, he sells it to the pharmacy for 50 cents a patch instead of $1 a patch. And now, of course, the pharmacy doesn't pass that on to the patient because the insurance company is going to pay what they're going to pay regardless of what the pharmacy paid. So that guy just made 49 cents because he paid his 1 cent per patch to the pharmacy, so he wasn't stealing in his mind, and maybe he wasn't. I don't know. There's a lot of illegalities with that particular move, but he paid his penny back and reasoned that he wasn't stealing because it wasn't harming the pharmacy. He put 49 cents in his pocket. The pharmacy put another 50 cents in their pocket, and everybody's happy, right? Wrong. The drug manufacturers are so powerful that it's illegal for contract diversion. And when I was a regulator, I actually went out and spent my time on your dollar looking for people that were selling dirt cheap drugs that were given for the purpose of control of the patient and making profit on it. That was my job, to prosecute contract diversion. And my thought is, so you have these thieves, that's too much. So you have these companies that are harming the people for profit with drugs that are a whole nother issue regarding the safety of them, but just the financial logistics of it. They are ripping off the people, and that's one of the things that Trump found, and that's how he was able to drop the price of drugs so dramatically. So, to me, I wanted you to understand that for them just to walk in and mandate that 31 different manufacturers no longer supply this drug immediately, okay, that's whacked. It's not going to happen. The manufacturers would be suing them all over the place. So that's not going to happen. Another thing I wanted to bring up that ties into that is that the manufacturers, the particular manufacturers that they mentioned in there, are all big vaccine manufacturers. And vaccine manufacturers aren't the ones that this kind of diversion usually happens with because they're so short-lived. They're refrigerated and so forth, and it's not the kind of drugs. It's not a repeat drug, okay, that people consistently take for the rest of their life. So to mention a bunch of vaccine manufacturers saying that you're going to stop all drugs with 31 different manufacturers that are life-saving medicines and the military is going to supply them now is just BS. And here's where it got, so the drugs, that these vaccines aren't diversion generally from that standpoint, that kind of diversion. Okay, and here's where it got really muddy for me, which also ties into that particular thing about who's manufacturing these drugs. Can the military just all of a sudden begin manufacturing drugs? No. These facilities require a lot of money, which the government has, granted, and a lot of oversight to make sure inspections. That was one of the things that was my task. I would go into these places, I would look at their good manufacturing practices. They're supposed to have charts. This refrigerator was checked and calibrated and or verified on these different. This piece of equipment was checked, validated. They did all of this process and kept an accurate record of what was done in the manufacturing process, in the post-production, in the packaging, in the long-term stabilities. When I'd walk in and there'd be walls of batches of drugs that were sitting there with long-term degradation studies being done to see how rapidly they degrade over years sometimes. So this isn't something you just pick up and go into your bathroom and start making. And the big hint for me, or how I knew this didn't happen, was because of my regulatory experience, but also back during this swine flu, if some of you remember that, in 2009, they were handing out a drug called Tamiflu, which was pretty new, by the way, like candy. Doctors weren't diagnosing, they weren't taking tests, because if you know, it's, or if you've ever heard even, it's really important not to indiscriminately use these antibacterial and antiviral drugs, because the bugs, the bacteria, the viruses, adapt and change, and then the drug becomes useless, okay? So it was really indiscriminate. Doctors were handing out prescriptions, and I would say to my patient, you tested positive for swine flu? Oh, no, the doctor gave it to me just in case. Okay, this was a pre-COVID bad medicine, okay? You don't do that. Any ethical physician doesn't do it. Unless they're mandated by somebody. And they get money. That's another thing. Or they get money for the number of Tamiflu. Well, nobody looked into it because it wasn't a big thing like this pandemic was. How we're learning how they got money for the various COVID diagnoses. So that wasn't a thing back then. But here's the thing that hit me. We were going through so much of it that, and one day I'm in the pharmacy and I unpack my order, and there's hundreds of bottles of Tamiflu that have marked on them military stockpile, not for resale. And this came from the manufacturer, not from the military. So what I learned, because of course right there the red flags went up, I began looking. Well, as it turned out, some politician, forget who it was at the time, approved a huge stockpile of Tamiflu, and it was about to expire. So now, instead of the manufacturer manufacturing more, because they already made these, they're allowing the military to return it to them, and they're redistributing short-dated antivirals under a narrative of indiscriminate prescribing and a pandemic threat. You figure it out. Okay, so the military's not making drugs for the general population. There may be some things going, but there is no way they can replace the drug supply in our country like that, and it would be unethical also, in my opinion. So that was now the other thing, mandatory 2-hour certification for all doctors, nurses, technicians, and so forth. Okay, it takes 9 to 24 months to become a vet tech, to be trained as a vet tech, and they're going to train you in energy medicine and events that can occur when people's allopathic medicines are taken away, and how to use med beds and so forth in 72 hours. I call BS, okay? No way. In fact, everything that I've heard is the people that are going to be able to operate these machines and work on the med beds undergo frequency scans. I've heard testimony by people that have been off-world using these, and they were scanned. And not one, but a couple. So you're scanned for your frequency, so get your shit together, guys. Quit being mean. Fix your vibration. I understand you're angry, but the hate is a really, really bad frequency. Instead, learn to get through that part of anger and come to the realization of acceptance of what happened and find productive ways to make that experience help mankind. So just think on a more global scale. And I know a lot of you guys that watch my station are really, really smart people. You're not your average clueless person, okay? You're smart. Whether you're book smart, whether you're school smart, whether you're experience smart, you're smart. So what I'm saying is the anger, the hate, the disempowerment, the despair, get through it. Get through it. We've all been there. I almost offed myself when I went down the rabbit holes a long time ago. So, frequency scans. Nobody's going to walk in 72 hours and every one of these people, nurses that are posting about how they would let a MAGA person die, they're not going to be trained to go on a med bed. Okay, trust me on this one. All right. Then this bank account that was established when we were born. I'm 71 years old. For the quantum, all hospital treatment will be funded by a QFS Medical Allocation System, pre-funded by an asset-backed account that was assigned to me 71 years ago. Okay? Energy medicine was being suppressed at that time, and nobody believed it. Anybody that was in the field was trained that this was a scam. Okay? So I find it highly, and how many banks have gone in and out of business over the years and so forth. And, I mean, you can come up with all kinds of excuses, but Occam's razor says the simplest solution is generally the proper one, the correct one. So I don't think any account was set up 71 years ago for quantum, and it's like they don't even understand what the quantum financial system is. They don't, whoever wrote this doesn't understand that. You just don't walk into a hospital and switch over the entire billing system to quantum computers. In what, 90 days? In 90 days. That doesn't happen. There's blockchain set up. There's satellites that must be, and all of this is underway. If you look at what Musk is doing with this satellites and the blockchain technology, it's all underway. But you do not walk in 90 days and make that change. And then the thing about your drugs aren't paid, okay? You won't have to pay a dime. The bill, your copay is zero, okay? Sounds wonderful, and we all want to jump on that one if we are sick and go to a hospital. However, what about the MRNIs? What about the MRIs? What about the MRIs and the CAT scans and the all the diagnostics, the colonoscopies? Who's going to pay for that? You still paying zero? Is the quantum fund going to pay that? It didn't say that. It said the drugs were being paid. So, again, this doesn't make sense. And what happens if you're not in one of those hospitals and you go to a doc in the box? You have to pay at the doc in the box, but you don't have to pay if you walk into a hospital? That would collapse our hospitals. If nobody went to a doctor anymore or a pharmacy and they went only to hospitals because it was going to be free. Doesn't make sense, doesn't wash with me. And what happens to people? My grandmother was a great grandmother, actually it was. She was 100% Cherokee Indian, and she was born on a reservation, had no birth certificate, married a white man, and she tried to pass herself off as a white person because back then that's what Indians had to do. And what would have happened to her? She was actually, he murdered her, the white soldier murdered her when they were living on the I think it was the Ohio River. So what happened to people like her? What happened if she were to get hurt? Somebody that is very, very old, 103 years old, they present at a hospital and they don't have a birth certificate, so they have no account. None of it works, okay? Then there was the fact that this was invested, okay? If it's real, tell me the ticker symbol on this, okay? For the account that's holding my birth certificate. It can be anonymous. There are ways that you can cloak investments, but they must, by law, have a ticker symbol. Where's it at? And why haven't you given it to us? What they did give us was a document number, which was total BS. the format that they use, DOD-Med-2026 slash 6129, violates established DOD issuing numbering systems. Okay, and this classified directives aren't numbered like that with prefix. Instead, they have prefixes like C dash, S dash, TS dash. They don't start with DOD dash med. So that was more BS before any number. And I also, to confirm that, I always confirm the AI, which you should too. So what I did is I went in and I looked for, you can either ask the AI for a link, which usually doesn't give you, or you can yourself go into a really good, I use Brave for a search engine. You can go into a search engine and look for the Executive Services Directorate. And that's what I did. I just put in something like DOD numbering system or something like that, a document numbering system. Came up with the Executive Services Directorate. And that I searched that number and it doesn't exist on any level. Okay, so I searched the database. It's not real. It doesn't match any numbering system. Is anybody else getting to the point where they are beginning to see that this is a deliberate lie, and also how it's being over and over again repeated and retweeted and retruthed and re-xed or whatever you call that now, and posted on your Facebook and posted everywhere all over the world? And then these desperate people, I love all of you that are so sick, and it breaks my heart when you tell me what's going on. How can somebody possibly do that? So that then it turns around and they show up at their hospital and nobody knows anything, which gives them more stress because they're sick. They went there with no money perhaps, and now they can't get their treatment because they're being told that what they understood was a lie. It's just bad on every part, guys. So then I looked for the original document, and I found that it first originated on April 25th of this year. So that Monday, the following Monday, would have been June 1st. My friend said she never got it. Whatever happened June 1st? Is any hospital employee online saying, WTF? We're pulling all the drugs off of our shelves. We're learning this new system. Has anyone done that? We're taking this 72-hour training. I haven't seen one post that confirms it. Not one bit of corroboration for this. So that's another thing. The date. It wasn't dated. That's a really important thing to check for when you're checking for disinformation. It never has a date. It never has a link. It never has a face or a name. It's always anonymous. No way for you to quickly confirm it, and no date to be able to look for it. So lots of things. There are just a few of the things you look for. Okay. It began at some point, I'm not sure in what I read, where the alleged official notification and the commentary by Julian Assange began. But I then went and checked to see if Julian Assange had ever posted this. And you may realize at this point that no, he's never posted it. It's total BS. There are thousands of things posted with his name on it, and it's not real. Deep state, guys. This is how the machine works. So the machine repeatedly builds up hope and then crushes it to destroy the human psyche. That's one of the tactics. And so it was very clear to me that this was misinformation. For me, I would never repeat something that I couldn't confirm. For exactly that reason. How would those people, those of you that have been so supportive and trust me so much, what would I have done to you if I told you this as if it were fact? I would be disrespecting you. and I would be destroying your health by crashing your vibrations and your frequency. There's something to be said for integrity. And when a person loses their integrity, they lose everything. That's why it's so important to check on some of these podcasters. See what they sold for money. See what they've done for money. See who they had contracts with, if you're going to believe them. Okay? See who gave them a $2 million or a $1 million contract. That's where you're going to learn where their allegiance is. Now, let me just address. Can people change? 100%. And we were told a long time ago that there are so many people involved in this whole operation. It became a way of life. Many of you may have sacrificed your beliefs to take the shot. And I pray you didn't, but you might have. So we do what we have to do to survive. You know what I'm saying? But could they flip? We were told that there are so many people that have done dark things. Some knowingly, some unknowingly. But some will be given the opportunity to flip. Some will be given and work with them, and they won't be exposed. That their legacy will be preserved. Their integrity will be preserved, so to speak. Then there's others that there are no bargains for. They're going down and they're paying hard, okay? And those are more the people that deliberately seeded this. Whereas the propagators might be the Joe Rogans of the world, or the, what's the beautiful blonde lady now that everybody's coming, or the who's the other guy, Tucker Carlson. They may be the ones that are given the opportunity to redeem themselves and save their name. Perhaps TMZ is another, although that one totally seems to know what they're doing, so I don't know. But and they all know what they're doing, but those big boys, when they propagate lies, they know what they're doing, but they're doing what they have to do to thrive in their mind. So guys, I hope this helps you in some little way. My goal isn't to just pass a lot of horror around and a lot of videos about blacks that are 90% AI to begin with. And by the way, when you see those videos of anybody, I don't care whether they're Muslims, blacks, whites, white trash, whatever you want to call it. There's one thing about X that I really double love, and that's that little icon on the top. You click on it, it won't tell you right off the bat, but it gives you an opportunity to ask a question on the right-hand side after it summarizes that post. And you just put in there, is this AI generated? Boom. In seconds, I don't want to send this. Or I had one today. And it was an AI generated thing about a baby going up to a puppy in a kennel, and it was very, very heartfelt and beautiful, and it made me feel good. And the poster said, the person that posted it said, I don't know if this is AI, and maybe they didn't realize that there was that little icon that they could check it. She said, I don't know if this is AI or not, in full disclosure. So, of course, Nosy goes and checks it, and it was indeed AI generated. But, I responded, and I said, you're right. I didn't say you're right. I said, this particular video is AI generated. However, this kind of AI doesn't separate people. It creates frequencies of love, good feelings, compassion. And for me, that is the purpose of creating a meme. Not to create false hate, contrived hate to separate us from within. So it's not that you can't ever use an AI image. I've used many in my things for demonstrative reasons. But know what you're posting is all I'm saying. And then at the bottom of my response to that, saying it made me feel good, and I'm game with these kind of AI generations all the time, I thanked the person that posted it for at least being aware that it could be AI and noting that. So that's all we have to do, guys, to shut these people down. We have to become more aware of what we're propagating. And I know, some of you are really new to this. And when I first did it, I was actually on Telegram. And I followed a guy, Phil, many of you may know him, and I believed everything he said, and I posted it and reposted it, so I'm guilty as anybody else, and I judge nobody. But I've been doing it a really, really long time, and I learned. So some of you that are new to this game and just waking up to what's happening and the horror, it's designed, these kind of things are designed to make you go crazy almost, with anger and wanting, shut up, Pico. Hey, shut up. Designed, be good boy, to make you angry and hateful and destroy us from within and destroy our health with really bad feelings and living in fear constantly. So just take a few minutes. If you don't know, do exactly like Deb did. Post it. Let me look it up for you if you're seeing something over and over again, or a narrative that you say, hallelujah, we've finally had something done. Okay? Also, another thing I wanted to say is that I also tried to confirm that within our official government websites, and because an announcement like that, of course, they said it was secret. It's always secret, but the secret time has passed, so you would think it would be somewhere in some kind of files, and that being less important and less determinative, but you can always check the government pages. They have a great database of all kinds of content where you can confirm this kind of stuff. So that's it for today. If you want to stick with me, I won't lie to you, I promise you that. And click that subscribe button. And another thing I found out about how they're controlling us is when you hit subscribe and you hit that bell for notifications, it defaults to let YouTube, who has demonetized and suppressed me, decide not to send you my videos if they choose to. So if you just go and hit that button, a side menu is going to pop up. Be sure to hit all instead of whatever they make it sound like, that they are doing it for your benefit. So hit all and you'll just get a little notification that I've got a new video coming out, or it has come out. And I'm doing a lot more of these, I'm trying anyway. I'm going to try and do lives now, and I'm going to try to, and I have been already doing what they're calling premieres, where I can go on there, and if you're watching at that time, and I can go on there and I can talk to you on this side thing, and we can talk back and forth in real time. So be sure, hit the all. Okay, guys? Don't let them suppress us. And I love you guys. Don't forget to go to the Clean Living Lab. It's a little slow. There was a whole other issue. I lost 3 days last week of total stress trying to get Starlink, because there's no human interaction there. And I had a whole video done. It's all AI, and I had a whole video done, and I didn't want it to sound like a bitch session because I was really angry at the time. I lost 3 days and more trying to get Starlink, and finally canceled it. And it will come up as resolved in their databases, but it wasn't resolved to any extent at all. I canceled it. I kept my faster cable, fiber optics connection, which is much significantly faster. I don't live in the country, so it's not a real benefit for me, but that's why I got behind. I really got to get away from that stuff, and I hope to be much more productive next week and have a lot more videos coming out on both this one and the Clean Living Lab. So until then, I love you guys. I thank you so much for the blessings of sharing time with me and sharing your energy with me every day. Bye-bye, and I'll see you real soon, I hope.